blessed day to everyone and welcome Katekbook to another set of video lesson. For today's video lesson, we're going to discuss few cooking method that is very important to our laboratory. So before that, by the way, my name is Mr. Malang Bernabe. I'd like to welcome you again for my online cookery class video lessons. And please do not forget to subscribe our YouTube channel, Presentasyon.TV, in order for you to be notified always that if we have a new video lesson, especially to our cookery class. And please do not forget also to hit that notification bell for you to be notified every now and then. So for today's video lesson class for cookery, we are on module 2, lesson 2. We talk about the different kinds of cooking method. Actually class, there were only 2 cooking method in cooking dishes. So what are these 2 cooking method? The first one is the so-called dry heat method. So dry heat method is a cooking procedure in which do not implies any form of liquid. So what is an example of liquid? So this is the water, we have the soy sauce, we have the vinegar, milk, or anything that is liquid. So dry heat method does not implies any form of liquid. So meaning, dry heat method is a cooking method involves the circulation of hot air. So the food is being cooked inside a hot compartment. For example, our oven or microwave. Some dry heat method class is cooked by over charcoal, heat of the charcoal, or this is called grilling, and sometimes it is called roasting. So let's try to have an example of what are the cooking procedure under dry heat methods. So cooking procedure, we are now talking about the example of dry heat method. So what are these cooking method under dry heat? The first one, we have the so-called grilling. Grilling is an example of dry heat method, which is the food is directly cooked over the heat of the flame or the charcoal. Okay, example are barbecue. The next example for dry heat method class, we have the cooking procedure called roasting. Roasting is an example of cooking meats on a hot compartment. Example of lechon manok. We have the so-called shawarma. The shawarma, the meat is being cooked over a hot compartment. Then when the meat is cooked, then keep on slicing and then serve. Another example for roasting is cooking our favorite lechon baboy. So lechon baboy has different kinds of varieties. We have big and we have small. The small lechon is so-called cochinillo, or we have the so-called lechon de leche. Alright, so that is an example of roasting. The next example class is a cooking procedure called frying. Frying is an example of dry heat method wherein the food or the meat or vegetable are cooked directly into a small amount of cooking oil, butter, or fats. So that is frying. If you are going to cook the food in a plenty of oil or plenty of cooking oil or fats, you submerge the food. That is called deep frying. So deep frying is an example of dry heat method. Like for example, you're cooking your pies, you're cooking your French fries, and you're cooking your empanada. You have donuts. So that is an example of deep frying The next example is called cooking procedure broiling. Broiling is somewhat the same like roasting. The only difference of this, because broiling has the so-called fire below and fire on top. This can be made of electric coil, or you can make this charcoal. So the food is put in between the fire on top and the fire below. So that is called broiling. It can be manually done, or it can be electric method. So that is broiling. The next example cooking procedure under dry heat method class is the called baking. Baking is cook the food in a hot air circulation inside the oven. There are big oven compartments and there are small oven compartments. So the food is being baked inside the hot air circulation. So that is under baking. Example of this are making breads, making cakes, making pastries, and making muffins. So the food or the breads, cakes, and pastries are cooked inside the oven. So there's a very hot compartment called oven. The next cooking method class is the so-called moist heat cooking method. Moist heat cooking method is a cooking method wherein the food is cooked with involved of liquid. So the food is being cooked together with liquid, any form of liquid like water, milk, or soy sauce. So let's go to the different example of cooking procedure under moist heat method. So the first example for cooking procedure under moist heat method is the so-called boiling. Boiling is a cooking procedure that means a lot of water, plenty of water. Example of this are nilagang baboy. We have sinigang. Pwede sinigang na baka, sinigang na baboy, o sinigang na isda. Anything that is cooked with plenty of water. Another example of cooking procedure for boiling is cooking of our daily rice. Because rice is being cooked with water. That is an example of boiling. Example for moist heat method class is the cooking procedure is blanching. Blanching is cooking of the food in a quickly manner. Meaning, if you are going to cook your vegetable and fruits in a quick manner, that by soaking the food into a briskly boiling water in a minimal number of seconds. That means the purpose of blanching class is to loosen the first layer of the skin of vegetable or meat to maintain the crispiness of the food. Next is the word simmering. Simmering class is a cooking of food in a low heat fire with a small amount of water. So the food is slowly cooked with a small amount of water or any form of liquid. Example of the or the so-called paksiw. The next example class for moist heat method is the word steaming. Steaming is a cooking procedure wherein you're going to prepare a briskly boiling water, then you put a steamer, then you cook the food over the evaporation of hot air. So example of this, siopaw, we have shumai, we have steamed puto, steamed cake, and most common are the so-called puto bongbong, or we have the so-called puto kochinta. This is our example of the food wherein the process is so-called steaming. The next cooking procedure under moist heat method is the so-called braising. Braising cooking procedure. So braising, class, is an example of moist heat method wherein the food is slowly cooked in a low-medium fire from plenty of water down to small amount of water. Example of this cooking procedure of braising are example of making our caldereta or making menudo. Is an example of cooking procedure under braising method. The next cooking procedure example for moist heat method, class, is the cooking procedure called poaching. Poaching is cooking of egg, like for example, in a small amount of water and with vinegar. The purpose of poaching of egg is to prevent overcook of the egg yolk inside. So when you say poaching, class, of egg is malasado type. So not overcooked or well done. For the fish is sometimes wrapped with foil or wrapped with aromatic leaves, then steam in a small amount of water with vinegar and other spices. So that is an example of poaching. The next example, class, sometimes this can be complicated because some reference or some books claim that this example is under dry heat method and some other books claim that is under moist heat method. But if we're going to take a look with their definition, actually this next example of cooking procedure is under moist heat method. This word is so-called sauteing. Sauteing is preparing the food with a small amount of cooking oil, hot in a hot pan, then you put some ingredients. So that is under dry heat method. But if you are going to put the small amount of oil with other ingredients like vegetable, then you are going to add with milk, you add with the soy sauce, and then the final product is it's not anymore dry heat method. That's become moist heat method. Why? Because you add liquid on your saute. So after putting the hot pan with cooking oil, then you add some spices, then you add your meat, and you add your vegetable. So if you do not add any form of liquid, that's become a dry heat method. But if you are going to add milk, soy sauce, or water, sometimes you add hot sauce, so that becomes a moist heat method. I hope I make myself clear for this kind of cooking procedure because this has become complicated because some books claim that sauteing is an example of dry heat method and some other books claim that the moist heat method is under sauteing. So that's the only difference. If you do not add any form of liquid to your saute food, so that's a dry heat method. But if you add, so that becomes a moist heat method. Did you understand? Okay, that's good. So the next cooking procedure is the so-called stowing. Stowing is a cooking method that combines a small, uniform pieces of cutting of vegetable and meat and cooking from plenty of water simmered down to small amount of water or sauce being left after cooking. So example of this are preparing your mechado and menudo. So that's it for the two cooking methods, the dry heat method and the moist heat method. Actually, class, before we're going to fire on our cooking laboratory inside the kitchen, so we are going to first know what are the difference of the two. I hope class you have learned something for today. Thank you for staying with me. But before you leave, comment down below. Your assignment is to identify one cooking techniques under what kind of method. Then describe that cooking procedure and give me an example of menu or dish that is cooked under what kind of cooking procedure and what kind of method. So comment down below together with your name and your section for me to identify that you are listening to me and you are watching the video for your attendance and for your score and answer. And thank you for bearing with me, class. This has been teacher Mr. Malang Bernabe saying you be safe always, class. I love to see you soon. Stay safe and goodbye. Thank you for watching.